we're going to take a look at specifically the first nun, the first yod, and the third hay. As you can guess, these are the worst. Why? What's the problem with all of these irregular verbs? They have the problem of a disappearing root letter. Okay? By the way, you might notice that almost conspicuous by its absence in this list are hollows, right? Because frankly, the hollows aren't a problem. So let's do them first, okay? Let's do them first. Working on the principle that we're going to build the imperatives off the imperfects, let's think about the imperfects of hollows. Okay? How do we make the imperfect of a hollow? Well, the example of a hollow is cum. Remember that in the perfect, true or false? In the perfect, hollows are hollow. True, that's where they're hollow. But in the imperfect, hollows retain the root, correct? So the imperfect of cum is yakum, right? Let's go straight to the second singular masculine form. The imperfect of cum in the second person will be takum, right? The second singular feminine of cum will be, can you make it? Ta, cum, mi, right? The plural of takum will be ta, ku, mu, or takumu. And this one is a little odd because you lose the mater letter, but you still get the O vowel. Ta, komna. Ta, komna. There are the imperfects of the hollows, all right? How would you make these imperatives? Take off the prefix, all right? So we simply end up with cum. Now that's the root. You should be able to figure this one out, all right? But do you see how you got that? We didn't get it by just taking the root. We took it by taking the imperfect, takum, and losing the prefix. Cum, kumi, kumu, kum, komna. Right. Hey, by the way, remember in the Gospels when Jesus raises the little girl and he says to her, Talitha, what does he say? This is Aramaic, but it's the same form. He doesn't say, well, cum is, it depends which Gospel you read. He says, Talitha kumi. Kumi. What form is he using? The second singular feminine imperative, because he's telling her to get up. Talitha kumi. Get up. Okay? So hollows aren't a problem. Okay? With me? You may not believe me. That's all right. But let's look at first nuns, okay? What happens to our first nun problem? Now, what shall we pick for a first nun? Let's use na, sa, since it came to mind. What's the imperfect of na, sa? All right, if we just start with the third singular masculine, which is the first form, what happens? Well, by the book, we're supposed to do this, right? Yin, yin. But what happens now with first nuns? This is something you can almost predict when you have a nun and a silent schwa. Here's a little review. What's going to happen? That nun assimilates, or it turns into the next letter, and gets replaced in the next letter by a dagesh forte. The bottom line is that the nun becomes a dagesh forte. So that the form that you actually see is yissa. Now this has also got an A vowel here simply because this is a guttural. That's a minor problem, and let's not even worry about that. The problem, of course, is the disappearing nun. This is review, correct? Correct. Now, when we go to the second singular masculine, conjugate yissa. Yissa, third feminine, would be I'm doing the yik, tick, tick, tick stuff. All right, yissa, tissa. The second singular form will be also tissa, right? The second singular feminine will be tissai, right? And then we'd have essa in the first. Over here we'd have yissa'u, yisana, and then in the second persons we'd have tissa'u, right? Then we'd have, am I right? Then we'd have tissana with our na ending. All right, those are the imperfect forms. If those are the imperfect forms, what are the imperative forms? Well, what are we doing here? Taking off the prefix, right? Now, here's the problem. When we take off the prefix, we're left with just this word sa, starting with two